The first rays of daylight sliced through the shattered windows of an abandoned warehouse on the edge of Baltimore, casting harsh streaks of gold across debris and filth. In the deepest, darkest corner, beneath the skeleton of an old steel staircase, a battered German shepherd lay half hidden by piles of garbage. His name was Zephyr, a name once called with pride and hope, but now the only sound was his frantic, ragged breathing, muffled by the thick industrial plastic jug jammed over his head. Each gasp was a battle. The suffocating plastic pressed tighter every time he thrashed, each movement scraping his infected neck beneath the crusted canine collar. The once proud badge now bit deep into raw flesh. Zephyr's eyes darted wildly, searching for help, or air, or any escape. He pawed desperately at the jug, claws scrabbling uselessly on slick plastic. Sunlight touched his mottled fur, patches missing, skin angry and red, highlighting his agony and exhaustion. A sudden noise. Footsteps, cautious but firm, echoed in the emptiness. Zephyr's heart pounded, fear, hope, confusion tangled together. A shape appeared at the edge of the light, an old man, grizzled and limping, his army jacket stained by years and hardship. Art Freeman, a homeless Vietnam vet, had wandered the city's forgotten places for decades. He saw the struggling dog, his face tightening with pain at the memory of other lost souls. Art crouched, keeping his distance, talking low and soft, hands out, palms up. "Easy, boy. Easy." His voice was cracked but gentle, the kind of voice that soothed wounded soldiers and broken animals alike. Zephyr's entire body tensed, then collapsed, too weak to resist or trust. Art tried to free him, pulling gently, twisting the jug, fighting panic as Zephyr bucked and whimpered. Nothing worked. The jug was wedged too tightly, and every touch made Zephyr flinch harder, haunted by memories of rough hands and betrayal. Art's own breath became labored. He paused, clutching his chest, but forced himself back to the dog's side. The warehouse was growing colder, shadows stretching longer as dusk threatened. Art pressed his forehead to the dirty concrete, eye to eye with Zephyr, whispering, "I know how it feels, kid. Left behind. But I'm not leaving you. You hear me?" The resolve in his voice rang through the emptiness, a lifeline thrown across the darkness. Zephyr's vision faded at the edges. The world was shrinking to the size of the jug, the pain in his neck, the desperate ache for oxygen. Art's hands trembled as he pulled off his jacket, draping it over Zephyr's shivering body. "We'll get you out, I swear it. Just hold on." Somewhere, far away, sirens wailed and traffic hummed, but inside the warehouse, time slowed to a crawl. Zephyr's eyes rolled back, body limp, hope flickering on the edge of extinction. Art, shivering in the growing cold, leaned back against a rotting support beam and took stock of his own life. The wars survived, the friends lost, the years drifting. In Zephyr's suffering, he saw his own, and something stubborn sparked alive in him. Suddenly, Art noticed a glint beneath the filth and dust. A battered metal tag still hanging from Zephyr's collar. He wiped the dirt away and squinted at the faded engraving. Baltimore Police K-9 Unit. Zephyr. For a moment, everything froze. This dog was a cop, or had been, a hero, abandoned like so many before. The revelation sharpened Art's determination. He fished an old army blanket from his backpack, tucking it around Zephyr, and murmured, "You're not just any stray. You're a warrior like me." He traced the letters on the tag with trembling fingers, as if by doing so he could summon the strength to save them both. As night descended, the warehouse seemed to close in around them. Zephyr's breaths grew shallower, his fight dimming. Art pressed his hand to Zephyr's side, feeling the weak thump of a heart that refused to give up. With a shaky voice, he promised, "I won't let you die alone. Not tonight. I'll stay." Outside, the city pulsed on, unaware that inside this crumbling relic, a forgotten dog and a forgotten man were clinging to each other, neither willing to surrender to the darkness. The cold crept in, numbing Art's fingers, but he stayed, humming old war songs, his eyes never leaving Zephyr's. As the stars blinked on above the city, Art whispered one last vow, his breath frosting in the gloom. "You hear me, Zephyr? Help is coming. We just have to last the night." And somewhere in the haze between sleep and suffocation, Zephyr sensed he was no longer alone. Across the city, as the cold crept deeper into the warehouse, another life balanced on a razor's edge. In a tiny, dimly lit apartment above a shuttered corner store, Noah Ellis sat hunched over his kitchen table, the glow of a single bulb sharpening the lines etched into his face. He was 45, a veteran who'd seen too much, lost too much, and carried a weight that had only grown heavier with each passing year. In front of him, a half-empty bottle of whiskey and a letter written in the trembling script of a man who'd already said goodbye. Noah's hands shook as he reread the letter. It was a confession, an apology, and a last, desperate wish for his adopted daughter, Jasmine. Jazz, as everyone called her. The words blurred and twisted. "I'm sorry. I tried. You'll be better off without me." He had convinced himself of this, told himself it was the only way to free Jazz from the orbit of his pain. Debt collectors' threats rang in his ears. He saw flashes of his wife's face, the way she used to smile before the hit and run, before everything fell apart. Jazz moved through the apartment, silent as a shadow. She was 17, wiry and alert, her eyes too old for her age. She found the letter. She read the first few lines and froze, her body going cold. For a moment, she simply stood there, breathing hard. Then, without a word, she marched into the kitchen and slammed the letter down in front of Noah. "Don't," she said. Her voice didn't waver. "You don't get to leave me too." Noah couldn't meet her eyes. His heart hammered as she stepped closer, tears trembling on her lashes. "I know you're hurting. I know you think you're doing this for me, but—" Her breath hitched. "I need you here. I still need you." Something in Noah cracked open. All the anger and exhaustion, the years of trying to numb himself to grief and regret, poured out in a ragged sob. Jazz wrapped her arms around him, holding on tight, refusing to let him go. The pain, raw and electric, moved between them, a current of loss and longing, of two people refusing to drift apart. The moment was interrupted by a ping from Jazz's phone, a message from a friend, a link to a viral social media post. Jazz pulled away, wiping her eyes, and clicked on the link. On the screen was a grainy photo, posted by a local community page, a battered German shepherd trapped in an industrial jug, eyes wide and wild with fear, a filthy canine collar biting his neck. The caption, "Abandoned in the old warehouse district, still alive, desperate. Can anyone help?" Jazz's heart squeezed. "Dad, look." She shoved the phone in front of Noah's face. "We have to do something. That dog, he's suffering just like—" She swallowed, not finishing the thought. Noah stared at the image. He recognized the pain in the dog's eyes, the same hopelessness he saw in the mirror every morning. For a moment, he wanted to turn away, wanted to retreat back into numbness. But Jazz was looking at him, her hopes stubborn, bright, and desperate. Jazz grabbed her coat. "We can't just sit here, please, Dad. For once, let's help someone who can't help themselves." Noah hesitated. The plan for the night, his last night, dissolved under the weight of Jazz's plea. She needed him, not as a martyr, but as a father. Something in the way she looked at him, a mixture of terror and determination, forced him to his feet. He pushed aside the whiskey and the letter, the darkness pressed into the corners of his mind, and nodded. "Okay," he said, voice rough with tears. "Let's go find him." Jazz didn't let go of his hand as they left the apartment, locking the door behind them. Outside, the city was alive with the chaos of a Friday night, sirens in the distance, laughter drifting from bars, the endless hum of traffic. But for Noah and Jazz, the world had shrunk to the single mission of finding the dog in the photo, the animal who mirrored their own desperation. As they drove through the city, Jazz scrolled through community pages, connecting with others who had seen the post. She found a comment, "Old warehouse on Harrow Street. Guy named Art was seen there. He's trying to help the dog." Jazz sent a message, not knowing if anyone would answer. The warehouse district loomed ahead, a wasteland of broken glass and boarded-up doors. They parked beneath a flickering streetlight and approached on foot, Noah's flashlight cutting through the shadows. Every step was haunted by the ghosts of Noah's past, war zones, hospital corridors, the moment he got the call about his wife. Jazz squeezed his hand. "You're not alone, Dad. We do this together." Noah nodded, the words settling deep inside him. Maybe, just maybe, this was a reason to keep fighting. Maybe Jazz was right. Maybe helping someone else, even a dog, could be the thread that pulled him back from the edge. They reached the warehouse. Noah pushed open the rusted door, the hinges shrieking in protest. Inside, their breath smoked in the icy air. The beam of Noah's flashlight landed on a huddled form, an old man and a dog, tangled together, unmoving. Jazz raced forward, dropping to her knees beside Art and Zephyr. The old man looked up, relief and exhaustion battling in his eyes. "He's still alive," Art whispered. "Barely." Noah knelt beside Zephyr, the dog's sides barely rising. He brushed the fur away from the collar, reading the battered tag. Baltimore Police K9 Zephyr. The name felt heavy in his mouth. He met Jazz's eyes and for the first time in a long time saw hope reflected back at him. As the night deepened, Noah realized something had changed. The darkness wasn't gone, but for the first time, he could see a way through. Maybe Zephyr wasn't the only one worth saving. Outside, sirens howled again, closer now. Someone had called for help. Jazz looked up at her father, determination blazing in her eyes. "We're not leaving him. Not ever." Noah nodded, feeling the old ache in his chest lighten, just a little. As dawn crept toward the horizon, a battered dog and two broken souls waited together in the cold, all refusing in their own way to give up. Night bled slowly through the cracked windows of the warehouse, painting long shadows across the broken floor. The city outside pulsed with distant sounds, sirens, laughter, cars slithering past in the darkness. But inside, time seemed to hold its breath. Art Freeman huddled closer to Zephyr, wrapping the trembling dog with the last layer of warmth he had left. An old army blanket, patched and threadbare from too many winters. The cold gnawed at his bones, and his chest ached in that familiar tight way that never fully left since the war. Still, he pressed his palm to Zephyr's shuddering side, speaking in a hush as if to soothe the ghosts of both their pasts. "You're tougher than you look, boy. Don't let go now." His fingers found the battered K9 tag again, tracing the faded letters. "I know what it's like to be left behind. But we hold on, don't we? That's what keeps us breathing." Zephyr whimpered softly, body tense and eyes wide under the flickering light. Every small sound, a mouse scurrying, the creak of metal in the rafters, made him flinch. Art recognized the look, that animal-bright panic mixed with exhaustion. He remembered it from the jungle, from nights when all a man could do was count his heartbeats and pray for morning. He talked to Zephyr about the war, about his friend Charlie who never made it home, about the years since, wandering Baltimore's forgotten places. He told stories of kindness, too. A woman on the bus who'd once shared her sandwich, a nurse at the VA who still called him Sir. These memories pooled around them, a soft shield against the sharpness of the present. But even stories couldn't keep the dark at bay. Art felt his own body weakening, every shiver a reminder that he wasn't young anymore. His vision blurred for a moment. He pressed his fist to his chest, willing his heart to hold steady. He wasn't ready to give up, not while Zephyr was still fighting beside him. Sometime after midnight, Zephyr edged closer, as if drawn by the low hum of Art's voice. The dog pressed his battered head into Art's lap, muscles twitching with the effort. Art stroked his fur, slow and steady, feeling the tension ebb. "That's it," he murmured. "Just rest, soldier. You're safe tonight." Sleep came in fragments. Art dozed, then jerked awake, haunted by half-remembered dreams and the ache in his chest. He reached out, making sure Zephyr was still breathing, still there. In those moments between sleep and waking, Art felt an unexpected peace. For the first time in years, he wasn't alone. But peace was fragile. Around 3 a.m., a sharp, twisting pain shot through Art's chest. He gasped, clutching at his heart, his vision going gray at the edges. Zephyr whined, pawing at his arm. "Not now," Art whispered, struggling to stay conscious. He managed to fumble his phone from his pocket, his hands numb and clumsy. With the last of his strength, he dialed the only number he knew from memory. Margaret, the retired social worker who lived nearby, the woman who still believed the world could be better. He left the line open, not sure if the call went through, his words tumbling out in a broken plea. "Don't let the dog die alone. He's a hero. like so many of us left behind. Margaret woke to the sound of Art's voice, half-choked, barely audible. Without hesitation, she threw on a coat, grabbed her keys, and ran through the pre-dawn streets toward the warehouse. She called 911 on the way, her voice steady with the urgency of someone who'd spent her life listening for the cries that went unheard. When she arrived, Art was sprawled against the wall, eyes squeezed shut, Zephyr curled at his feet. Margaret knelt beside them, feeling for Art's pulse, then turning her attention to the dog. She stroked Zephyr's fur, whispering soothing words, while she pressed her phone to her ear, relaying the scene to emergency dispatch. The minutes crawled by. Margaret wrapped her scarf around Zephyr's neck, trying to ease the pressure of the collar, but the plastic jug was still wedged tight. Zephyr whimpered but didn't fight. Margaret spoke to Art, her voice a low anchor in the swirling panic. "You're not alone, Art. Help is on the way." Somewhere in the tangle of pain and memory, Art heard her. He smiled weakly, tears slipping down his cheeks. "I promised him, Margaret. I promised I wouldn't leave." She squeezed his hand. "You kept your word, and now it's my turn." Red and blue lights flickered through the broken windows as the ambulance arrived. Paramedics rushed in, working with practiced urgency. They lifted Art onto a stretcher, bundled Zephyr in blankets, and whisked them both away from the darkness. In the quiet of the ambulance, Zephyr shivered against Margaret's side, her hand never leaving his fur. Art drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind tracing the edges of old regrets, friends lost, years wasted, words left unsaid. But as the city lights flashed past, he realized that maybe, just maybe, there was something left to fight for. The night was long and uncertain. At the hospital, doctors moved quickly, stabilizing Art, checking Zephyr's breathing, examining the wounds beneath the collar. Margaret waited in the hallway, phone buzzing with updates as word spread online about the rescue. She posted a picture of Zephyr to Facebook, the battered dog draped in an army blanket, captioned with a simple plea: "Hero needs help. Let's not fail him now." Back in the hospital room, Art stirred, opening his eyes to see Margaret at his side. Zephyr, now freed from the worst of the plastic jug but still trapped by the collar, lay beside the bed, eyes trained on the old man. Art reached out, brushing Zephyr's ear. "We made it, soldier." Margaret smiled through tears. "You both did." And as dawn finally broke over Baltimore, painting gold across the sterile walls, Art felt something fragile and powerful inside him. Hope, thin as a thread but strong enough to hold. The city woke up with sunlight glinting off wet sidewalks, the news of Zephyr's rescue already trickling through neighborhood Facebook groups and community chats. Margaret's late-night photo, the battered German shepherd swaddled in a faded army blanket, his soulful eyes half closed in exhaustion, spread like wildfire. "Hero needs help. Let's not fail him now," the caption read, but the message hit deeper. "Don't look away from suffering, not now, not again." Jasmine Ellis, Jazz to everyone, was up before dawn, scrolling feverishly through notifications on her phone. Her friends had tagged her in Margaret's post, and soon enough she recognized the faces: the old man, Art, whose hand she'd gripped the night before, the dog who'd nearly died in her lap. Jazz's heart hammered. She felt raw and unfinished, as if the dog's pain had slipped into her own chest and wouldn't let go. Jazz dressed fast, stuffing her phone in her pocket, yanking her boots on, already texting her friends. She blasted a group chat. "I need help, for real. This dog saved people. Now it's our turn." Her best friend Mallory was the first to answer, followed by kids from school, a few old neighbors, and even a couple of strangers who'd seen the story online. It wasn't long before the living room was filled with half-awake teenagers and a flurry of laptops, chargers, and coffee mugs. Jazz took the lead, her energy burning off the edges of her nerves. She pulled up a map of the city, sticking colored pins into sightings people had reported overnight. Someone spotted a canine collar in a scrapyard. Another saw an old man and a dog near the river. She color-coded notes: Art Zephyr Hospital, warehouse found, Margaret witness. The wall above the couch became a nerve center, lines of string crisscrossing between Polaroids, scraps of newsprint, and phone numbers. Noah, her father, hovered in the doorway, unshaven and tired but steadier than last night. He watched Jazz rally the group, her confidence fierce and infectious. For the first time in a long time, he let himself hope that maybe she was right. Maybe they weren't as alone as they felt. Jazz took a deep breath. Okay, here's the deal. Zephyr's not just any dog. He was a police K9, he saved lives, and now he needs us, all of us. We're not letting him down. She shot a look at Noah, daring him to object. He didn't. The group divided into teams, some handling social media, others hitting the streets to post flyers and ask questions. Jazz herself wanted to visit Art in the hospital. She felt a bond, something old and unspoken, maybe the strange comfort of finding someone else who carried invisible wounds. Art was awake, propped up in a hospital bed. Jazz hesitated at the door, then crossed the room, feeling shy and brave all at once. Art's face creased into a smile when he saw her. "You're the girl from the warehouse," he said, voice rough but kind. Jazz nodded, pulling up a chair. "You stayed with him. You saved his life." Art shrugged, staring out the window at the city skyline. "We saved each other, I think." For a moment, silence filled the room, quiet but not empty. Jazz reached for his hand, her fingers small and cold. "I know you lost friends," she whispered. "Me too." Art looked at her then, eyes rimmed red. "It never really stops hurting, does it?" Jazz shook her head and they sat together in the silence, the hospital's machinery softly beeping behind them. Meanwhile, Margaret's post continued to circulate. Local news picked up the story. Hero dog found abandoned. A radio station called for volunteers to help in the search for Zephyr's former handler. In a city so often divided by bad news, the story lit a fuse. Veterans, dog lovers, teachers, parents, and even the neighborhood toughs rallied behind the mission. Jazz's friend Mallory organized a supply drive, blankets, dog food, even a mobile vet who'd offered to help for free. Noah, though reluctant, let himself be swept into the momentum. He led a search team along the riverbanks, talking with shopkeepers and the homeless community. The more he searched, the more he found pieces of himself he thought were lost. His ability to lead, his compassion, the old stubborn streak that once got him through war zones and heartbreak. As the map filled with new pins and leads, a stranger entered the picture. Owen Riker, a man with a faded badge and an icy stare, appeared on the edges of the community groups and search parties. He claimed to be a former K9 handler, saying he wanted to help bring Zephyr home. But there was something off in the way he asked questions. Too much interest in the collar, too little in the dog. Riker's arrival sent a ripple through Jazz's nerves. She flagged his name on the wall. Owen Riker, ex-K9. Caution. Late that night, Noah confronted Riker outside the hospital. "Why are you really here?" Riker flashed a smile, thin and practiced. "Just doing my part, like you." Noah watched him go, unease prickling his skin. He returned to Jazz, who'd been updating the map with a new tip from the animal shelter. She looked up at him, her determination undimmed. "We're close, Dad. I can feel it." He nodded, pulling her in for a hug. "We're going to bring Zephyr home." That night, Jazz and her friends took turns monitoring the search feeds, answering messages from strangers offering help, mapping every possible clue. The city, for a brief moment, felt united, not by anger or tragedy, but by the fierce hope that a wounded dog and a wounded city could both be healed. And far away, in a quiet room, Zephyr slept at last, wrapped in warmth, surrounded by a web of people who refused to give up. Morning in Baltimore brought a heavy, pale sky that threatened rain, making the city's old bricks look tired and bruised. Jazz stood in front of the map on the living room wall, her gaze tracing the tangled lines of string and pins, every sighting, every whispered lead. The search for Zephyr had become the heartbeat of their little group, but something gnawed at the edges of their hope. The feeling that what they were chasing was bigger, older, and more tangled than just a lost dog. Noah stared out the window, sipping burnt coffee. He was thinking about Riker, about the way the man had appeared, all false charm and cold eyes, far more interested in Zephyr's collar than the wounded animal himself. There was a weight in Noah's chest, a veteran's instinct, that said danger was circling. That morning, Jazz and Mallory set out early with a new lead from a volunteer. The address was a crumbling row house near the old rail yards, a place the city had forgotten. Inside, they found a battered blanket and a pile of empty food cans, the unmistakable smell of dog fur, and, on the floor, something that made Jazz's heart stop. Zephyr's faded police tag, half buried under dust. She knelt down, brushing it clean. The words Baltimore Police K9 Zephyr glimmered dully. Tears pricked her eyes. "He was here," she whispered, voice hoarse. "He was so close." Mallory squeezed her shoulder. They snapped photos, texted Noah, and hurried outside, feeling the city's eyes watching from every broken window. Back at the hospital, Art had been moved to a shared room. Jazz visited after school, holding the tag in her hand. Art's face crumpled with emotion as he turned it over, remembering. Zephyr saved 17 lives, you know. Pulled a kid from a burning car, found a lost girl in the snow. He was a hero until they tossed him aside after the incident with Riker. Jazz frowned. What happened? Art looked away, the silence thick. They said it was Zephyr's fault, but I knew better. Riker was always cutting corners, always angry. There was an accident on a call. Riker was suspended, but Zephyr, he just disappeared. Art shook his head. You don't just throw away a hero. Jazz squeezed his hand. We won't let them forget him, I promise. Word about Zephyr reached even further that afternoon when Dr. Renee Martin arrived at the hospital. She was a tall woman in her 40s with calm eyes and a gentle voice. Jazz watched as she approached Zephyr, who sniffed her hand, wary but curious. Dr. Martin knelt, stroking his fur with practiced hands. You remember me, don't you? She murmured. You saved my son. She looked up at Jazz and Art, voice soft. My boy wandered into the street after school one day. Zephyr pulled him back, right before a car ran the red light. If it weren't for this dog, I never would have forgiven myself. Jazz's heart squeezed. Why did you come back? Dr. Martin's answer was simple. Because we owe him. All of us who were saved. She offered her medical skills, checking Zephyr's wounds and helping Margaret with medication. As she worked, her phone buzzed, a news alert, more animal abductions, another police K9 missing. Jazz and Mallory exchanged worried looks. This is connected, Mallory whispered. Noah spent the afternoon digging through old police reports, cross-referencing names and dates. The deeper he looked, the more he found threads leading back to Owen Riker. There were whispers of evidence tampering, allegations of trafficking, cases that always seemed to vanish before the truth surfaced. Every time a dog went missing, Riker's name was somewhere on the paperwork. That night, Noah sat at the kitchen table with Jazz and Dr. Martin, the police tag between them. Riker wants that collar, Noah said quietly. There's something hidden in it, something worth destroying. Dr. Martin nodded. Some K9 collars have hidden cameras, for accountability. If Zephyr's does, it might hold footage of the incident, the real story. And maybe more. Jazz's breath caught. We have to find him before Riker does. In a quiet corner of the city, Riker watched their efforts unfold on social media, his lips twisting into a sneer. He sent a text, one word, one address, to a contact who owed him a favor. He wouldn't let a washed-up dog and a handful of kids ruin everything. Meanwhile, Dr. Martin left the hospital and found Jazz outside, sitting on the curb, knees pulled tight to her chest. Dr. Martin sat beside her, offering quiet comfort. I lost myself for a long time after my son's accident. I thought I'd never stop feeling guilty, but Zephyr helped us both heal. He deserves the same. Jazz nodded, wiping her eyes. He's more than a dog. He's a survivor. Across the city, strangers kept the search alive. A truck driver spotted a German shepherd limping near the shipyards. A nurse in the ER swore she'd seen a man with a K9 tag wrapped in a coat. Every tip, every rumor, brought their web closer to Zephyr and to the truth. By midnight, their group had grown. Veterans, animal lovers, families with their own stories of rescue, all were searching now. The city's wounds were still open, but for the first time in a long time, people were reaching out to heal them together. Noah watched Jazz as she fell asleep on the couch, the police tag clutched tight in her fist. He brushed her hair back, a soft smile creasing his weathered face. For the first time in years, hope didn't feel like a trick of the light. He whispered a promise to the sleeping girl and the battered dog. "We'll find you, Zephyr, and this time, no one's giving up." The city that once seemed vast and indifferent was now a map of possibility, pulsing with tips and whispered warnings. Rain slanted across Baltimore's empty streets, the slick roads mirroring the anxiety that ran through the hearts of those searching for Zephyr. Every phone buzzed with new leads. Every shadow looked like it could be hiding the wounded dog or the man determined to silence him. Jazz hardly slept. She clutched Zephyr's battered police tag in one hand and her phone in the other, refreshing search threads, her mind racing with scenarios. She barely noticed the hunger pangs or the ache in her shoulders. In her, the city's hope had crystallized. If she gave up, so would everyone else. Noah felt the old adrenaline of combat flicker to life as the web tightened. He coordinated the searchers, veterans, kids from Jazz's school, animal lovers, splitting them into teams and combing the neighborhoods nearest the last sightings. He tried to hide his anxiety, but Jazz saw it in the way he paced, the way he never let his phone leave his hand. In the background, Dr. Martin worked miracles, juggling calls from the shelter, the police, and families who'd lost their own dogs to the same mysterious disappearances. Her calm steadied the team, but even she grew tense as she heard the name Riker whispered by an old contact in animal control. "Watch your back. He's not just after the dog." On a gray Saturday, a tip finally cut through the noise. A dock worker at the old shipyard saw a man dragging a limping German shepherd toward a storage shed. The description matched Zephyr. Jazz and Noah leaped into action, barely pausing to grab raincoats as they raced for the truck. Mallory and Art, fresh from the hospital, joined, along with a handful of volunteers. The shipyard loomed, rows of rusted shipping containers, puddles shining under weak streetlights. Jazz's sneakers splashed through standing water as she led the way, following muddy paw prints that disappeared beneath a row of stacked crates. Her breath steamed in the cold air, heart pounding so loud she could barely hear Noah calling behind her. They found Riker first. He was hunched at the far end of the lot, his back to them, cursing under his breath as he struggled with Zephyr's collar. The dog lay motionless on the ground, ribs heaving, foam at his lips. The collar was half off, Riker's fingers digging into Zephyr's battered fur, desperate to rip away the damning evidence. Noah shouted, and Riker spun around, fury flashing in his eyes. "Stay out of this, Ellis," he barked, pulling a small knife from his pocket, waving it between the searchers and Zephyr. "Drop it, Riker," Noah yelled, stepping forward. His voice, honed by years in uniform, froze the moment. Jazz darted behind a container, phone already filming. Mallory sent a quick text with their location. Backup was coming. Riker hesitated, eyes flicking between Noah and the growing group behind him. "You don't get it. That dog's got evidence on me. On all of us. You let this out, you'll ruin lives." Noah stood firm. "Those lives were ruined the second you chose corruption over duty." He held Riker's gaze, refusing to back down. In the chaos, Zephyr summoned what little strength he had left. He tried to crawl away, but his body gave out, legs collapsing beneath him. Jazz broke cover and ran to him, skidding on her knees in the mud. She threw herself over Zephyr, shielding him with her own body. "You're not taking him!" she screamed, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. Riker advanced, knife flashing. Noah lunged, tackling him into the mud. They struggled, fists and elbows slipping and cursing. Art and a volunteer pulled Noah off, restraining Riker just as police sirens wailed in the distance. Riker kicked free, but Mallory tripped him, sending the man sprawling. In the confusion, Dr. Martin sprinted from her car, medical kit swinging. She knelt beside Zephyr, eyes scanning his injuries. "The collar's cutting off his air. He won't make it to the hospital," she shouted. Without hesitation, she grabbed scissors from her kit, slicing through the plastic jug and the tangled collar, blood welling from Zephyr's neck as the tight band released. Jazz sobbed, holding Zephyr's head. "Please, please stay with me." Dr. Martin worked with clinical speed, stitching the worst wounds, flushing dirt from Zephyr's eyes and mouth. She pressed her fingers to his chest, feeling the labored thump of his heart. "He's alive. Barely. But we need to move." Police dragged Riker away in cuffs, yelling threats over his shoulder. Rain battered the group, but nobody moved. Not until Zephyr whimpered and tried to sit up, eyes glazed but aware. Jazz hugged him, whispering over and over, "You're safe. I've got you. I promise." Noah knelt beside them, every line in his face etched with relief and fear. "You did it, Jazz. You saved him." Dr. Martin helped load Zephyr into the back of her SUV, Art climbing in beside him. The group piled into cars, the convoy snaking out of the shipyard toward the animal hospital, hazard lights flashing like beacons in the storm. In the rush of sirens and rain, Jazz leaned against Zephyr's battered side, finally allowing herself to cry, not just for the dog, but for everyone in their little web of survivors who refused to let the darkness win. As the city receded behind them, a single hard truth crystallized for everyone: justice and hope are never given freely. You have to chase them, claw for them, and sometimes bleed for them, but sometimes, just sometimes, you win. The animal hospital's waiting room pulsed with tension. People from every part of the city crowded the vinyl chairs: volunteers, shelter workers, off-duty cops, teenagers, old men in faded army hats. At the center of it all, Zephyr lay on a blanket, barely moving, stitched and bandaged, an IV running into his battered leg. Every so often he'd twitch, chasing dreams or pain, and Jazz would move closer, her hand resting gently on his side. Outside, rain streaked the windows, the storm refusing to let up. The news vans idled on the curb, their cameras pointed at the door. Inside, phones buzzed with updates. The city's attention was a living, restless thing, a whole community holding its breath for a single wounded dog. Noah paced the hallway, his nerves stretched raw. He watched every shadow, every unfamiliar face. He didn't trust that the fight was over, not with Riker's threats echoing in his ears and the weight of everything that still needed to be revealed. Every so often, Jazz would glance at him with that same stubborn hope he'd first seen in the warehouse, the hope that had dragged him and Zephyr out of the dark. Suddenly, the automatic doors slid open. 2 officers entered, escorting a disheveled Riker in handcuffs. But as they passed the check-in desk, Riker jerked free, lunging for the hallway. The officers struggled, one thrown hard against the wall, Riker breaking loose in a wild, desperate surge. His eyes blazed with panic. He wasn't here for freedom. He was here for the collar. Jazz saw it first, Riker sprinting down the hall, aiming for Zephyr. She grabbed the battered collar from the table, clutching it to her chest as Riker barreled toward her. "Give it to me," he snarled, voice ragged, but Jazz stood her ground, heart thundering. Noah launched himself into Riker's path, slamming him against the wall. They grappled, crashing into a cart of medical supplies. Art and Mallory rushed in, trying to restrain Riker, but the man fought with the strength of someone who knew everything was about to end. Amid the chaos, Zephyr forced himself up, trembling, vision swimming. He saw Jazz in danger and stumbled forward, placing himself between her and Riker. The room seemed to freeze, the battered dog and the broken man face to face. Zephyr growled, low and guttural, his body swaying but unyielding. Riker faltered for a heartbeat, haunted by the memory of the hero he'd once commanded, then lunged again, hands outstretched. Zephyr snapped, clamping down on Riker's wrist, not hard enough to maim, but enough to stop him cold. Riker howled, struggling, but Zephyr held on until Noah and the officers pulled Riker away, pinning him to the floor. Jazz fell to her knees, cradling Zephyr's head, tears streaming down her cheeks. "You're safe now," she whispered. "You saved me. You saved all of us." The fight echoed down the hallways. Someone live-streamed the struggle, first Jazz's friend Mallory, then others, sending the drama spiraling across social media. Within minutes, thousands tuned in, hearts pounding as the truth began to unravel in real time. With Riker finally restrained, Noah took the battered collar and handed it to the police. Dr. Martin, voice steady and clear, explained about the hidden camera, the footage stored inside. An officer connected the collar to a laptop. The room held its breath as the video loaded. What played out on screen was worse than anyone had imagined. Riker and his associates caught red-handed in illegal trafficking, the violence that ended Zephyr's career, the abuse, the deals made in back alleys. Names and faces scrolled by, and with every revelation, the web of corruption grew clearer. Reporters outside scrambled to record the story. News alerts popped up across the city. K9 hero exposes criminal network. Dog's camera footage leads to police arrests. The narrative shifted. No longer just a rescue, the city was witnessing justice in action, led by a dog who refused to be forgotten. In the hospital, the adrenaline faded, replaced by exhaustion and quiet relief. Zephyr collapsed, eyes fluttering closed as Jazz pressed her face to his fur. "It's over, Zephyr," she whispered. "You did it." Art sat heavily in a chair, clutching his chest, overwhelmed by the memories and the hope that bloomed in their wake. "Sometimes," he said softly to no one in particular, "the only way out is through. You hold on long enough, and maybe the truth gets a chance." Noah hugged Jazz tightly, pride and awe warring on his face. For the first time he believed, not just in Zephyr, but in himself, in his daughter, in the tangled, hurting city that had managed to rally together for something pure. The police took Riker away, his curses drowned out by the cheers of those who'd witnessed it all. In the waiting room, volunteers and strangers hugged each other, crying and laughing at the same time. For a moment, Baltimore felt healed, if only a little, by the courage of a battered dog and the community that refused to abandon him. Later, as night settled in, Dr. Martin checked Zephyr's vitals. "He's stable," she told Jazz. "He's got a long road ahead, but he's a fighter." Jazz curled up beside Zephyr, refusing to leave his side. She opened her phone, reading through thousands of messages, strangers thanking her, sharing their own stories of loss and survival. She typed one last update, her fingers trembling. "He's safe. The truth is out. Thank you, everyone. Never stop fighting for what's right." The post went viral within minutes. The city, battered but not broken, had a new hero, and for the first time in a long while, something like hope. Baltimore buzzed with something rare, relief, pride, and a sense of justice. As dawn broke, the city's skyline shimmered, and for once it wasn't the storm clouds or police sirens dominating the news, but Zephyr's story. Headlines splashed across every screen. "Hero dog uncovers corruption." "Zephyr exposes K9 trafficking ring." News vans ringed the animal hospital, and people gathered on sidewalks holding homemade signs. "Thank you, Zephyr. Baltimore's hero, you saved us." Inside the hospital, the mood was softer, but just as electric. Zephyr rested, still battered, but out of immediate danger. His IV beeped steadily, and Dr. Martin moved from patient to patient with a renewed energy, her eyes often lingering on Zephyr, her quiet reminder of hope. Jazz rarely left the dog's side, running her fingers gently along his patched fur. She read him notes sent by strangers, stories of other dogs, thanks from families he'd helped, and confessions from people who, inspired by Zephyr, decided not to give up. Noah, for the first time in years, felt the fog in his head lifting. He stood near the window, watching the crowd gather outside. It wasn't just Zephyr they were cheering for. It was all of them, the lost, the wounded, the people who fought back when the world tried to erase them. Mallory brought coffee to Jazz, who grinned through tears. Even Art, bruised but grinning, found himself at the center of a knot of veterans trading stories and plans for the future. As news of the video footage spread, the city's police department was thrown into chaos. Officers who had once brushed Zephyr aside now faced questions about evidence tampering, illegal trafficking, and the abuse that had forced so many loyal canines off the force. Riker and his associates were led away in handcuffs, their faces splashed across the news. More than a dozen other officers, some who'd looked the other way, some who'd taken money, were suspended pending investigation. Margaret, watching the news in her small kitchen, let out a sob of joy. "They listened," she whispered. They finally listened. She called Art, her voice trembling, and he just laughed, a sound so light she barely recognized it as his. As the city's justice system churned to life, the community rallied. Donations poured in to cover Zephyr's medical bills. Local restaurants delivered free meals to the hospital. Children arrived in handmade Zephyr Squad shirts, waving to the TV cameras. Dr. Martin received hundreds of emails from other families, many who had lost dogs to similar schemes, others who wanted to help heal the city's wounds. When Zephyr was well enough, the hospital hosted a small press conference on the front steps. Jazz stood beside him, her hand on his back. The mayor stepped up to the microphone, his voice shaking with emotion. In a city too often divided by fear, Zephyr reminded us of what we can do when we fight for the vulnerable. Because of him, and because of all of you, Baltimore is a little braver, a little more just this morning. The crowd erupted in applause. Zephyr lifted his head and wagged his tail, soaking in the attention. Noah squeezed Jazz's shoulder, whispering, "You did this. You kept fighting." As the crowd dispersed, Dr. Martin approached Noah and Jazz with an idea. "I keep thinking about how many people and dogs are suffering, how much good Zephyr has done. What if we started a therapy program for veterans, for kids who've seen too much, for anyone who needs healing?" She glanced at Zephyr, who nudged her hand with his nose. Noah looked at Jazz. Something in her face told him she already knew his answer. "I think it's time we gave back, the way Zephyr did." So began the next chapter, a therapy program rooted in Zephyr's legacy. Jazz designed flyers and social posts. Art reached out to veterans organizations. Dr. Martin set up partnerships with clinics and shelters. The first meeting was held in a borrowed church basement, folding chairs arranged in a loose circle. Zephyr, still healing, lay at the center, his calm presence a magnet for laughter and tears. Veterans told stories they'd never spoken aloud. Kids who'd lost parents or lived through violence found comfort in Zephyr's soft gaze. Even those who arrived skeptical left with a sense that something, however small, could change. One by one, the walls people built around their pain began to crumble. Art, who'd spent years drifting in and out of shelters, felt his own transformation. He moved into Margaret's spare room and started writing letters to other homeless vets, telling them Zephyr's story. "It's never too late," he wrote. "You're not forgotten. There's still a fight worth having." Jazz and Dr. Martin's son, once strangers, now bonded by a single moment of courage, became fast friends. They organized food drives and school visits, spreading Zephyr's message of resilience and hope. Children hugged the dog, whispered secrets to him, or simply sat in silence, their burdens lighter for a while. The news stories slowly faded. Life returned to normal, but the people who'd come together around Zephyr felt different. They were less afraid to ask for help, quicker to offer a hand to someone in need. The city, still battered, still beautiful, seemed to stand a little taller. One afternoon, as Zephyr led a group of children through a park, Jazz paused to watch the sunlight catch his fur. "You're not just a survivor," she whispered. "You're a healer." Zephyr glanced back as if he understood, then trotted ahead, his shadow long and golden behind him, a living proof that even the deepest wounds can become the source of someone else's healing. Months slipped by. Autumn wrapped the city in a golden hush, softening even the roughest corners of Baltimore. In the calm after so much chaos, Zephyr's legend became woven into the quiet rhythms of daily life. Yet for those closest to him, the meaning of everything that had happened began to deepen, echoing far beyond a single act of heroism. Zephyr, now healthy and robust, lived with Noah and Jazz in a modest row house trimmed with yellow mums. Every morning, Zephyr would wait at the door, tail thumping, eager to start the rounds that had become his new purpose. Together, the three visited schools, nursing homes, rehab clinics, anywhere people needed comfort. Zephyr had become more than a survivor. He was a bridge, a presence who softened silences and broke through walls of fear or grief. One crisp morning, Art joined them on a visit to a local elementary school. He stood at the edge of the playground, watching as Zephyr sat quietly among a cluster of children, listening to their stories with patient eyes. For a moment, Art felt out of place, an old soldier surrounded by laughter, but then a boy with bright red sneakers tugged at his sleeve, asking, "Is it true Zephyr was a real police dog?" Art nodded, kneeling down. "He's the bravest I've ever met, not just because he caught bad guys, but because he didn't give up, even when everyone else did." He smiled, the simple act easier than it used to be. That evening, Art sat at Margaret's kitchen table, a mug of tea steaming in front of him. The words he'd shared with the kids echoed in his mind. He took out a battered notebook and began to write. A letter addressed to my brothers and sisters still out there. In it, he poured out everything Zephyr had shown him. We all get left behind, sometimes by the world, sometimes by the people we trust. That's not the end. You keep fighting, even when it hurts, even when you think nobody cares. Because you never know whose life you might touch just by surviving another day. The act of writing was healing, each word a stitch closing up old wounds. Art sent copies to local shelters, veterans centers, and even taped one to a telephone pole in the neighborhood where he used to sleep rough. For the first time, he truly believed the things he wrote. Elsewhere, Dr. Martin prepared for a community event, a panel on trauma, healing, and the lessons of loyalty. She stood before an audience of families, teachers, and first responders, Zephyr calmly lying at her feet. She spoke plainly, her voice clear and warm. "I'm a doctor, but it took a wounded dog to remind me that healing isn't about erasing scars. It's about finding ways to live with them." Zephyr taught us that loyalty and resilience don't mean you're never afraid or hurt. They mean you keep showing up for yourself and for each other, even when it's hard. She looked at Zephyr, who gazed back with soft understanding. Sometimes the ones we overlook, the wounded, the strays, become the strongest healers among us. Jazz, now deeply changed by the journey, found herself becoming a leader in ways she never expected. She organized more visits, started a blog about Zephyr's story, and spoke openly about her own struggles. When kids wrote in, scared, lonely, or angry, she answered with honesty and hope. "You're not broken," she wrote. "You're just learning where the cracks let the light in." The therapy program flourished. Veterans found kinship in each other's company, children learned to trust again, and families once divided by silence began to talk. Zephyr, with his steady gaze and uncomplaining presence, helped everyone see themselves a little more clearly. One afternoon, as leaves blew down the street in golden spirals, Noah watched Zephyr nap in a patch of sunlight. He sat beside the dog, stroking his ears. "You saved more than you know, old friend," he murmured. "You saved me. You saved Jazz. You saved all of us." He realized then that true courage wasn't found in a single dramatic act, but in surviving heartbreak and betrayal, and still reaching out for help, or to help others. That, Noah thought, was what Zephyr had shown the world. The broken could become healers, and justice sometimes came from the most unexpected places. At the next group meeting, the circle was full. Kids, parents, veterans, teachers, even people who'd once doubted the whole idea. Jazz led Zephyr to the center, inviting anyone who wished to share a story of hope or survival. Art stood, his voice trembling but strong. "This dog taught me that community is built from shared pain and collective hope. We come together not because we're perfect, but because we're trying." The words lingered, settling over the group like a blessing. As winter approached, Zephyr's impact only grew. His story was told and retold, but its meaning deepened. For Baltimore, the lesson was clear. No one is too lost to be found. No scar is too deep to heal. The city, so often battered by the world's indifference, had proven, through one battered German shepherd, that hope was possible, and that the courage to endure could transform even the darkest wounds. And so, the legend of Zephyr continued to ripple outward, a story retold in playgrounds and shelters, whispered by those who once thought they were forgotten. Thanksgiving arrived under a sky that seemed impossibly blue, the kind of day Baltimore rarely got in late November. The city's wounds, though still there, felt a little lighter, stitched together by kindness, courage, and the stubborn insistence that nobody should be left behind. All over town, people gathered. Families, friends, strangers who'd become something more because of Zephyr. But in Patterson Park, a celebration was building, one that would become a memory for everyone there. A makeshift stage had been set near a stand of gold-leafed oaks, rows of folding chairs fanned out toward a granite stone newly set in the earth, in honor of Zephyr, hero, healer, survivor. Streamers fluttered. Children darted through the crowd in hand-drawn Zephyr Squad t-shirts, and a brass band from the local high school tuned their instruments, uncertain but proud. Noah, suited up for the first time in years, straightened his tie in a truck's side mirror. Jazz, her hair pulled back in a bright blue ribbon, gave him a thumbs up. "You look like a senator," she teased. For a moment they grinned at each other, no grief between them, just the warmth of family that had fought too hard to ever take for granted again. Art sat in the front row, Margaret beside him. He wore a jacket with a dozen faded patches, the letter he'd written to other vets folded in his pocket. Doctor. Martin and her son stood together, arms around each other, watching Zephyr sniff the grass by the stage, still limping a little, still proud. When the ceremony began, the mayor stepped up, his voice steady but thick with feeling. "A year ago, this city was at a breaking point. But because of a dog, a survivor, we remembered what it means to show up for each other. Zephyr reminded us that healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means having the courage to face our wounds together." He gestured to the crowd, letting the applause settle. "Today we don't just honor a hero, we honor the hope he gave us." Jazz was called to speak next. She climbed the steps, her hands shaking, Zephyr trotting beside her. She looked out at the sea of faces, kids, parents, strangers, and took a breath. "When my dad and I found Zephyr, we thought we were saving him, but really he saved us. He taught me to keep fighting, to trust again, to love even when it hurts." "I know I'm not the only one." She smiled, voice catching, but her eyes shone. "Zephyr gave this city a second chance, and if he could do that, maybe any of us can." Children were invited forward. They hugged Zephyr, pressing homemade medals around his neck, their laughter ringing in the air. For some, the dog's scars were startling, but to most they seemed a badge, proof that survival was possible, even after pain. Zephyr bore it all with quiet dignity, tail wagging, head held high. Dr. Martin took the stage last, her words slow and sure. "Redemption is possible for anyone, dog or human, no matter the pain or betrayal endured. Zephyr's story is proof that the greatest transformations come not from running from struggle, but from meeting it with honesty, with help, and with hope. It's the power of community, the courage to tell the truth, the refusal to give up on ourselves or on each other." As she spoke, Art felt something shift inside him, not the hollow ache he'd carried for years, but a sense of belonging. He watched the faces around him, young, old, black, white, broken, whole, realizing that in their shared pain, they'd built something new, a community, a family. The band played "America the Beautiful." A flock of birds rose over the park, scattering sunlight in every direction. The granite stone gleamed. For a moment, all was still. After the speeches, the crowd lingered. People swapped stories, shared food, played games on the grass. Noah found himself beside Dr. Martin, their conversation easy, hopeful. Jazz helped a young boy read the words on Zephyr's memorial, explaining, "Survivor means you keep going, even when it's hard." Art passed out copies of his letter to anyone who wanted them, trading old war stories and new dreams with other vets. The mayor asked Jazz for one last favor. "Would you and Zephyr lead us on a walk?" Together with Zephyr out front and the city at their heels, they circled the park, past playgrounds and gardens, through sunlight and shadow. Jazz glanced at Noah. He walked tall, steps light, finally at peace. As the walk ended, Zephyr paused by the granite stone, lifting his head to the wind. Children hugged him, and for once, he did not flinch. He'd carried the city's pain, but today he felt only warmth, acceptance, and the electric hum of possibility. People drifted home as afternoon slipped into dusk. Jazz lingered at Zephyr's side, her hand in his fur. "We're okay now," she whispered. "You did it." Zephyr leaned against her, eyes bright, scars shining like metals. Noah joined them, his voice low and certain. "You gave us all a second chance, buddy. That's something no one can ever take away." Art watched them from a distance, heart full. He understood now what it meant to be seen, to belong, to help. He whispered a thank you to the wind, sure it would find its way to every soul who needed to hear it. As evening fell, the last sunlight slanting gold across the city, Zephyr and Noah walked side by side toward home. Their shadows stretched long and easy on the grass, their burdens lighter, proof that even from the darkest places, hope could rise. The story of Zephyr, his wounds, his courage, his new life, became not just a tale for Baltimore, but a legacy. A reminder that in America, survival, healing, and unity were always possible. That anyone, no matter how lost or scarred, could make things right. And that sometimes it takes just one heart, still beating, still open, to lead the way.